Jake Harrison sat in his command chair, staring at the red light blinking on his communication panel. The light had been flashing for 10 minutes now, but he did not want to answer it. Red lights on Kepler Station always meant trouble, and trouble was the last thing he needed today. The mining station floated quietly in the empty space between stars. Outside the thick metal walls, nothing moved except tiny pieces of rock and ice. Jake liked the silence of space. It was peaceful. But the red light kept blinking, demanding his attention. He pressed the button with a heavy sigh. The face of Captain Lisa Morgan appeared on his screen. Her dark hair was messy, and her eyes looked tired. She had been working in the science lab for 3 days straight. "Commander Harrison," she said quickly. "We have a problem, a big problem." Jake rubbed his forehead. He was getting too old for big problems. At 55, he had been running Kepler Station for 12 years. He had seen pirates, equipment failures, and even a few alien encounters. But Lisa's voice had a fear in it that he had never heard before. "What kind of problem?" he asked. "New Eden has gone silent, completely silent. They sent out a distress call 6 hours ago, then nothing. No radio signals, no data streams, nothing. New Eden was a farming planet 3 days away from Kepler Station. It was home to 20,000 people who grew food for the outer colonies. The planet was peaceful and safe. Nothing bad ever happened on New Eden." "Equipment failure?" Jake suggested hopefully. Lisa shook her head. "I don't think so. The last message we got was strange. They were talking about ground shaking and animals going crazy. Then someone screamed something about a shadow with 4 legs before the signal cut out." Jake felt a cold chill run down his back. In his 12 years as commander, he had learned to trust his feelings. Right now, his feelings were telling him that something very bad was happening. "Get Captain Carter and Dr. Morgan ready for a scouting mission," he ordered. "Take the fast ship. I want to know what happened on New Eden." 2 hours later, the scout ship left Kepler Station. Captain Ben Carter was at the controls, his hands steady on the flight stick. Ben was 38 years old and had been flying ships since he was 16. If anyone could get them to New Eden safely, it was Ben. Dr. Lisa Morgan sat in the passenger seat, checking her scientific equipment. She was the best xenobiologist in this part of the galaxy. If there was something strange on New Eden, she would figure out what it was. The trip to New Eden took 3 days. During the flight, they tried to contact the planet many times but got no answer. The silence was scary. New Eden was supposed to be full of life and noise, farming equipment, children playing, animals making sounds. But now there was nothing. When they arrived at New Eden, everything looked normal from space. The planet was green and blue with white clouds floating in the sky. Cities and farms covered the surface like a patchwork quilt. But there were no ships moving around the planet, and no signals coming from the surface. "Take us down to the main settlement," Lisa said. "Whatever happened, it started there." Ben guided the ship through the atmosphere. As they got closer to the ground, they could see that something was very wrong. Buildings were broken. Vehicles were turned over. Long, deep scratches cut through the streets like giant claws had scraped the ground. They landed in what used to be the town square. Now it was a mess of broken concrete and twisted metal. Ben and Lisa put on their protective suits and walked outside. The air was safe to breathe, but it smelled wrong. It smelled like fear and destruction. "Look at this," Lisa said, kneeling beside a deep scratch in the ground. The mark was as wide as her hand and went down into the earth for several inches. "These are claw marks, but they're huge. No animal I know could make marks this big." Ben walked over to a destroyed building. The walls had been torn apart like paper. Metal beams were bent and twisted. "Whatever did this was incredibly strong," he said, and it was angry. They searched the town for survivors but found no one. Houses were empty. Stores were destroyed. The silence was complete and terrifying. It was like 20,000 people had simply disappeared. Then they heard a sound. It was faint, but it was definitely human. Voices coming from underground. "Down. Here," Ben called out. "There's a basement entrance." They found a group of 30 people hiding in an old storm shelter. The people looked scared and tired. They had been hiding for 4 days, afraid to come outside. When they saw Ben and Lisa, some of them started to cry with relief. "Thank goodness you're here," said an old man named Pete Williams. He was the town's chief farmer. "We thought everyone was dead." "What happened here?" Lisa asked gently. "What did this to your town?" Pete's hands shook as he spoke. "It came 3 nights ago, during the storm. At first we thought it was the wind making noise, but then we heard the animals screaming, all of them at the same time. Cows, horses, chickens, dogs. They were all terrified." A young woman named Katie Brooks continued the story. "We looked outside and saw this shadow moving through the town. It was huge, like a building that could walk, but it moved so quietly. We could barely see it even when it was right in front of us." "What did it look like?" Ben asked. "Like death," said another survivor, an old woman named Amy Rodriguez. "It walked on 4 legs, but each leg was as thick as a tree. It had claws that could cut through metal like butter. And its eyes. Oh, its eyes glowed in the dark like 2 red stars." Lisa took notes on her computer. "Did it make any sounds?" "Sometimes," Pete said. "When it was destroying buildings, we could hear a low growling sound, but most of the time it was silent. That was the scariest part. Something that big should make noise when it moves, but this thing was like a ghost." "Where did it go?" Ben asked. Katie pointed toward the mountains. "It left after the 3rd night, just walked away into the hills like it had finished what it came to do. We've been too scared to leave the shelter." Ben and Lisa spent the rest of the day documenting the damage and interviewing the survivors. The story was always the same. A massive creature had attacked the town for 3 nights, destroying everything in its path, and then disappeared. The survivors called it the Warbeast because it seemed to love destruction and fighting. As evening came, Ben and Lisa prepared to leave. They would take some of the survivors back to Kepler Station and send a full rescue team for the others. "One more thing," Pete said as they were getting ready to go. "This morning we picked up radio signals from other planets, similar attacks. The thing that hit us has been to other worlds too." Lisa felt her blood turn cold. If the creature was moving from planet to planet, attacking settlements, then nowhere was safe. The outer colonies were in terrible danger. As their ship lifted off from New Eden, Ben looked back at the destroyed town. "What do you think it wants?" he asked. Lisa stared at her notes and the pictures she had taken of the claw marks. "I don't know," she said quietly. "But I think we need to find out before it attacks again." Above them, the stars looked cold and distant. Somewhere out there, the Warbeast was moving through the darkness, looking for its next target. And humanity had no idea how to stop it. 3 months had passed since the attack on New Eden, and the situation was getting worse every day. The creature that people now called the Warbeast had struck 17 different planets. Each attack was more devastating than the last, and no one seemed able to stop it. Colonel Amy Rodriguez stood in the command center of Meridian Prime, looking at the large screen that showed a map of the outer colonies. Red dots marked every planet where the Warbeast had attacked. The pattern made no sense. The creature seemed to jump from world to world with no clear plan. "Another attack last night," reported Lieutenant Katie Brooks, walking up to Amy with a data pad in her hands. "The mining colony on Titan 7. 200 people dead. The main settlement completely destroyed." Amy felt tired and frustrated. She had been hunting this creature for 3 months with the best soldiers in the Galactic Defense Force. They had advanced weapons, tracking equipment, and years of experience fighting dangerous enemies. But the Warbeast was unlike anything they had ever faced. "Any survivors?" Amy asked. 12, Katie replied. "They're telling the same story as all the others. A massive creature, moving silently through their town, destroying everything in its path. Then it just disappeared into the wilderness." Amy turned to look at Dr. Lisa Morgan, who was working at a computer station nearby. Lisa had become the leading expert on the Warbeast, studying every piece of evidence they could find. But even she seemed puzzled by the creature's behavior. "What do you think, Lisa?" Amy asked. "Is there any pattern to these attacks?" Lisa looked up from her computer screen. Her face was pale and she had dark circles under her eyes from too many sleepless nights. "I've been analyzing the data for weeks," she said. "The creature is learning. Each attack is more efficient than the last. It's studying our defenses and finding new ways to get past them." "That's impossible," said Captain Ben Carter, who had just arrived from his latest scouting mission. "Animals don't learn that fast. They follow instincts, not battle plans." "This isn't just an animal," Lisa replied. "The more I study it, the more convinced I become that we're dealing with something highly intelligent. Maybe even more intelligent than us." The thought sent a chill through the room. Everyone had been hoping that the Warbeast was just a very large, very dangerous animal. If it was intelligent, if it could think and plan, then it was much more dangerous than they had imagined. Engineer Pete Williams joined the conversation. He had been working on new detection equipment for the past month. "I've made some progress with the sensors," he said. "The creature has some kind of natural camouflage. That makes it almost invisible to our equipment, but I think I've found a way to see through it." He led them to a table where several strange-looking devices were laid out. They looked like regular scanners, but they had been modified with extra parts and wiring. "The creature's camouflage works by bending light and energy around its body," Pete explained. "But it can't hide everything. These modified scanners can detect the distortions it creates in the environment." Amy picked up one of the devices. "Does it work?" "In theory, yes, but we haven't had a chance to test it on the actual creature yet." "We're going to get that chance," Amy said with determination. "I'm tired of always being one step behind this thing. It's time to take the fight to it." The next week, Amy assembled the largest hunting party ever organized. 50 of the best soldiers in the defense force, armed with the most powerful weapons available. They had energy rifles, plasma cannons, and even a few experimental laser weapons that could cut through solid steel. They set up their base on Meridian Prime, a planet covered in crystal forests and rocky mountains. The Warbeast had been spotted there twice in the past month, and Amy was betting it would return. The planet had several small settlements that would make tempting targets. Dr. Lisa Morgan had insisted on joining the hunting party. She wanted to observe the creature's behavior firsthand. "We need to understand what drives it," she explained. "If we can figure out why it attacks, maybe we can predict where it will strike next." The team spread out across the planet's surface, using Pete's modified scanners to search for any sign of the creature. For 3 days, they found nothing. The crystal forests were beautiful but empty. The only sounds were the wind blowing through the strange musical trees. On the 4th day, Lieutenant Katie Brooks was leading a patrol through the northern forest when her scanner started beeping. She looked at the screen and saw a faint outline moving between the trees. Her heart started beating faster. "This is Brooks," she whispered into her radio. "I think I found it. Grid section 12, about 2 kilometers north of the river." Amy's voice crackled back through the radio. "Are you sure? Don't take any chances." Katie watched the outline on her scanner. It was huge, much larger than she had expected. The creature was moving slowly through the forest, but even its careful movements were shaking the ground slightly. "I'm sure," she whispered. "It's heading toward the crystal caves. If it gets in there, we'll lose it." Amy made a quick decision. "All units converge on Grid 12. We're going to try to surround it." The soldiers moved through the forest as quietly as possible. The crystal trees made strange musical sounds when the wind blew through them, which helped cover the noise of their movement. Within an hour, they had the creature surrounded. Amy could see it now with her own modified scanner. The Warbeast was even more terrifying than the reports had suggested. It was as large as a small building, with 4 powerful legs that ended in claws the size of swords. Its hide looked like natural armor, thick and dark. Most frightening of all were its eyes, which glowed with a red light that seemed to burn through the darkness. "Open fire," Amy commanded. 50 weapons fired at once. Energy beams and plasma bolts lit up the forest like a light show. The crystal trees sang with a high, musical note as the energy passed through them. For a moment, Amy thought they had won. Then the smoke cleared and the Warbeast was still standing. The weapons had hit it, but they had barely scratched its armored hide. The creature turned its massive head toward the soldiers, and Amy could see intelligence in its glowing eyes. It was not just angry. It was calculating. The Warbeast moved faster than anything that large should be able to move. It charged toward Katie's position, its claws tearing through the crystal trees like they were made of paper. Katie tried to run, but the creature was too fast. Just as the Warbeast reached her, Ben Carter appeared from behind a tree. He fired his plasma rifle directly at the creature's head, trying to distract it from Katie. The blast hit the creature in the eye, and for the first time, it made a sound. The roar that came from the Warbeast was unlike anything any of them had ever heard. It was part anger, part pain, and part something else that sounded almost like sadness. The sound echoed through the crystal forest, making the trees sing in response. The creature turned toward Ben, and Katie saw her chance to escape. She ran as fast as she could, crashing through the crystal trees. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of the battle continuing, but she did not look back. When she finally reached the base camp, she found Amy and the other survivors already there. More than half the soldiers had made it back, but many were wounded. The attack had been a disaster. "It's too strong," Ben said, holding a bandage against a cut on his arm. "Our weapons can't hurt it, and it's too smart. It knew we were coming." Lisa was studying the data from the attack. "Look at this," she said, pointing to her computer screen. "The creature's behavior during the fight. It wasn't just attacking randomly. It was testing our weapons, learning how they work." "What do you mean?" Amy asked. "It let us shoot it," Lisa explained. "It could have killed us all in the first few seconds, but it didn't. It wanted to see what we could do. It's studying us, just like we're trying to study it." The realization hit them all at once. The Warbeast was not just a predator. It was a researcher. It was learning about humanity, testing their defenses, and preparing for something bigger. "We need to warn the colonies," Amy said quietly. "If this creature is as intelligent as we think, then these attacks are just the beginning. It's preparing for something much worse." As night fell over Meridian Prime, the team prepared to leave the planet. Somewhere in the crystal forests, the Warbeast was still out there, moving silently through the darkness. And now they knew the truth. It was not just hunting them, it was studying them, and that was far more terrifying than any simple predator could ever be. On the quiet planet of Haven's Rest, life moved at a slow and peaceful pace. The morning sun painted the sky orange and pink as it rose over the rolling hills. In the distance, purple mountains stretched toward the horizon like sleeping giants. Danny Miller woke up early, as he did every morning. The 8-year-old boy jumped out of bed and ran to his window to look outside. In the pasture behind his house, he could see the family's cows eating grass. A few chickens wandered around the yard, pecking at bugs in the dirt. Danny loved animals more than anything else in the world. He had a special way with them that his parents could not understand. The farm animals always came to him when he called. Even the wild creatures that lived in the forests seemed to trust him. "Danny, breakfast is ready," called his mother, Claire Miller, from the kitchen downstairs. Danny ran down the stairs and into the kitchen where his parents were sitting at the wooden table. His father, Steve Miller, was reading news reports on his computer tablet while eating his eggs and toast. "Anything interesting happening in the galaxy?" Claire asked her husband. Steve shook his head with a worried look on his face. "More attacks from that creature they're calling the Warbeast. It hit another colony last week. The military still can't stop it." Danny looked up from his cereal bowl. He had heard his parents talking about the Warbeast many times over the past few months. The adults seemed very scared of it, but Danny was curious. He wondered what kind of animal could frighten so many people. "What does it look like?" Danny asked. "Nobody knows for sure," Steve replied. "The reports say it's very large and moves like a shadow. Some people think it's not really an animal at all." Claire reached over and ruffled Danny's hair. "Don't worry about it, sweetheart. Haven's Rest is far away from all that trouble. We're safe here." Danny nodded, but he kept thinking about the mysterious creature. In his young mind, he could not understand why an animal would want to hurt people. All the animals he knew were friendly and gentle. After breakfast, Danny went outside to do his morning chores. He fed the chickens and gathered their eggs. He helped his father check on the cows and horses. All the animals seemed happy and calm, the way they always did. Around noon, Danny heard a strange sound in the sky. He looked up and saw several large ships flying overhead. They were not the usual transport ships that brought supplies to Haven's Rest. These ships were dark gray and had weapons attached to their sides. "Military ships," Steve said, coming out of the barn to stand beside his son. "I wonder what they want here." They did not have to wonder for long. The ships landed in the field next to the town center. Soldiers in uniform came out of the ships along with people carrying scientific equipment. Danny watched with excitement as they set up tents and machines. That evening, a soldier came to the Miller family's door. She was a tall woman with short, black hair and serious eyes. She introduced herself as Colonel Amy Rodriguez. "We're setting up a temporary base here," Amy explained to Danny's parents. "We have reason to believe the creature we're hunting might come to this area." Claire felt her heart skip a beat. "The Warbeast here? But this is a farming planet, why would it come here?" "We're not sure," Amy admitted. "But it seems to target isolated communities. Haven's Rest fits the pattern of its previous attacks." Steve crossed his arms over his chest. "What are you asking us to do?" "We're giving all the residents a choice," Amy said. "You can evacuate to a safer planet, or you can stay and help us try to stop this creature. If you stay, we'll do everything we can to protect you." Danny's parents talked about it for a long time that night after he went to bed. But Danny did not go to sleep. He sat at the top of the stairs and listened to their conversation. "We should leave," Claire said. "It's too dangerous to stay here with Danny." "But this is our home," Steve replied. "Our whole life is here. The farm, the animals, everything we've worked for. What good is any of that if we're dead? The military says they can protect us, and maybe they're right. Maybe this is their chance to finally stop this thing." In the end, they decided to stay. Steve said he was too stubborn to run away from his own home. Claire agreed, but only because she knew the other families in town would need their help. The next morning, Danny ran outside to see all the new equipment the soldiers had brought. There were large machines that made beeping sounds, weapons that looked like something from a science fiction movie, and computers with screens showing maps and numbers. One of the soldiers was a young woman named Lieutenant Katie Brooks. She was checking the equipment when Danny approached her. "What does all this stuff do?" Danny asked with innocent curiosity. Katie smiled at the boy. "This equipment helps us find the creature we're hunting. These scanners can see things that are invisible to our eyes." "Why is it invisible?" "It has a special ability that lets it hide from us, like playing hide and seek, but much more dangerous." Danny thought about this for a moment. All animals hide when they're scared. Maybe it's just afraid. Katie was surprised by the boy's words. Most adults talked about the Warbeast as a monster or a killing machine, but Danny saw it as just another animal that might be frightened. Later that day, Dr. Lisa Morgan arrived at Haven's Rest. She had come to study the local wildlife and see if there were any clues about why the Warbeast might target this planet. When she met Danny, she was amazed by his knowledge of animals. "Tell me about the creatures that live in your forests," Lisa said, sitting with Danny under a large tree behind his house. Danny's eyes lit up with excitement. He loved talking about animals. "There are deer that change color with the seasons, and birds that can copy any sound they hear, and little furry things that glow in the dark when they're happy." "How do you know so much about them?" Lisa asked. "I watch them, and I listen to them. They talk to each other all the time, just not with words like we do." Lisa was fascinated. "What do you mean they talk to each other?" "They use sounds and smells, and the way they move their bodies. If you pay attention, you can understand what they're feeling." "Have you ever met an animal that was angry or dangerous?" Danny nodded. "Sometimes, but usually they're only dangerous when they're scared or protecting. They're babies. If you're gentle and patient, most animals will be friendly." Lisa wrote notes in her computer as Danny talked. She had never met a child who understood animal behavior so well. Most adult scientists spent years learning what Danny seemed to know naturally. "What do you think about this creature we're hunting?" Lisa asked carefully. "The one they call the Warbeast?" Danny was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I think it must be very lonely," he said finally. "If it's hurting people, it's probably because it doesn't know how to talk to them. Maybe it's trying to say something, but nobody understands." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. The boy's words made sense in a way that all their scientific theories did not. What if the Warbeast was not just a mindless killer? What if it was trying to communicate? That night, as Danny lay in bed, he could hear the soldiers outside testing their equipment. The machines made strange humming sounds, and the weapons fired practice shots that lit up the night sky. But Danny was not afraid. He was thinking about the lonely creature that everyone was so scared of. In his mind, he imagined a large, sad animal wandering through space looking for something it could not find. He wished he could meet the Warbeast and show it that not all people were enemies. He wished he could help it find whatever it was looking for. But Danny was just a little boy on a small farm, and the Warbeast was somewhere out there in the vast darkness of space. As he finally drifted off to sleep, Danny had no idea that very soon his wish would come true in a way that would change everything. The storm came without warning on a Tuesday night. Dark clouds rolled across Haven's Rest like a black blanket covering the stars. Lightning flashed in the sky, and thunder crashed so loud that it shook the windows of every house in the settlement. Danny Miller sat in his bedroom watching the rain pound against his window. He loved storms because they made the night feel alive and full of energy. But tonight felt different. The animals on the farm were acting strange. The cows were restless in their barn, and the chickens had refused to come out of their coop all day. Downstairs, his parents were talking quietly with Colonel Amy Rodriguez and Dr. Lisa Morgan. Danny could hear their voices, but he could not make out the words over the sound of the storm. He pressed his ear to the floor and tried to listen. "The scanners are picking up something big moving through the northern forest," Amy was saying. "It's heading this way." "Are you sure it's the creature?" Steve Miller asked nervously. "The energy readings match what we've seen before. It's definitely the Warbeast." Claire Miller moved closer to her husband. "How long do we have?" "Maybe an hour, maybe less. The storm is making it hard to get exact readings." Lisa looked at her computer screen, watching the blinking dot that represented the approaching creature. "It's moving faster than usual, almost like it knows we're waiting for it." Outside, the soldiers were taking their positions around the settlement. They had set up their weapons and detection equipment in a wide circle, hoping to trap the Warbeast when it arrived. Lieutenant Katie Brooks was coordinating the defense from a command post in the town center, but the storm was making everything more difficult. The rain was so heavy that the soldiers could barely see 10 feet in front of them. The wind was howling through the trees, making it impossible to hear anything approaching. Danny got dressed quietly and crept down the stairs. His parents were still talking with the military officers in the living room, so he slipped out the back door. He wanted to check on the animals and make sure they were safe. The barn was warm and dry inside, but the animals were still nervous. The horses were stamping their feet and snorting. The cows were huddled together in the corner, their eyes wide with fear. Danny had never seen them act this way before. "It's okay," he whispered to them, reaching out to pet the nearest cow. "Don't be scared." But the animals would not calm down. They kept looking toward the north, toward the forest where the creature was supposed to be coming from. Danny followed their gaze but could see nothing except darkness and rain. Then he heard it. A sound that was barely audible over the storm, but somehow different from the wind and thunder. It was like a low humming noise, deep and powerful. The animals heard it too because they all became perfectly still at the same time. Danny felt his heart start beating faster. The Warbeast was close. Back in the house, the adults were watching their screens with growing alarm. The creature had stopped moving about half a mile from the settlement. It had been sitting still for 10 minutes and nobody knew why. "What's it doing?" Amy asked Lisa. "I don't know. Maybe it's studying our defenses, or maybe it's waiting for something." Steve looked out the window toward the barn. "Where's Danny?" "He was upstairs a few minutes ago." Claire ran to check Danny's room and found it empty. "He's not here." "Danny? Danny, where are you?" They all realized at the same time that the boy was missing. Amy grabbed her radio and called her soldiers. "This is Rodriguez. We have a missing child, 8-year-old boy, probably somewhere on the farm property. We can't search for him now." Katie's voice crackled back through the radio. "The creature is moving again. It's coming straight toward the settlement." In the barn, Danny could feel the ground starting to shake. Whatever was coming was so large that its footsteps made the whole building tremble. The animals were terrified now, making frightened sounds and trying to hide behind each other. Danny wanted to run back to the house, but he could not leave the animals alone. They needed someone to stay with them, to keep them calm. So he sat down in the middle of the barn and started talking to them in his gentle voice. "It's going to be okay," he said. "I'm here with you. Nothing bad is going to happen." The shaking got stronger. Through the walls of the barn, Danny could hear the soldiers shouting orders and weapons charging up. Then came a sound like metal being torn apart, followed by screams. The Warbeast had reached the settlement. Danny could hear it moving through the town, destroying everything in its path. The sound of breaking glass and crumbling concrete mixed with the storm. The creature was not just walking through the settlement. It was tearing it apart. The barn door exploded inward like it had been hit by a bomb. Wood and metal flew everywhere and rain poured in through the opening. In the doorway stood the most terrifying thing Danny had ever seen. The Warbeast was even larger than he had imagined. It filled the entire doorway with its massive body. Its 4 legs were like tree trunks, ending in claws that gleamed in the lightning. Its hide was dark and rough, like armor made of stone, and its eyes burned, with a red light that seemed to cut through the darkness. The creature stepped into the barn, and Danny could feel the floor shake under its weight. The animals pressed themselves against the far wall, too scared to move. Danny found himself sitting directly in front of the monster, with nowhere to run. The Warbeast lowered its huge head and looked down at the boy. Its breath was hot and smelled like metal and lightning. For a moment, they stared at each other in the flickering light of the storm. Danny was scared, but he was also curious. This was the creature that had frightened the entire galaxy. But looking into its glowing eyes, Danny did not see a monster. He saw something that looked almost sad and confused. The creature opened its mouth, showing teeth as long as Danny's arm. The boy could hear his parents shouting his name from somewhere outside, but their voices seemed very far away. Then something strange happened. Instead of attacking, the Warbeast tilted its head to one side, like a dog trying to understand something. It made a low rumbling sound that was not quite a growl and not quite a whine. Danny had heard that sound before. The animals on the farm made similar noises when they were trying to communicate with him. The creature was trying to say something. "Hello?" Danny said quietly, his voice barely audible over the storm. The Warbeast stopped moving, its glowing eyes focused on the boy with what looked like surprise. It made the rumbling sound again, softer this time. Danny slowly got to his feet. He was still scared, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear. "Are you lost?" he asked. The creature stepped closer, its massive head now only a few feet away from Danny. The boy could see intelligence in its eyes and something else. Loneliness. "You are lost, aren't you?" Danny said with understanding. "You don't know where you belong." Outside, the storm was starting to weaken. The rain was not falling as hard and the thunder was moving away. But inside the barn, boy and beast continued to stare at each other in a moment that would change everything. The Warbeast made another sound, longer and more complex this time. To Danny, it sounded like the creature was trying to tell him a story about being alone in the dark spaces between stars, looking for something it could not find. Danny took a small step forward. The creature did not move away. "I understand," the boy whispered. "You're just trying to find your way home." Danny stood in the barn, looking up at the massive creature that towered over him. The Warbeast's glowing red eyes stared down at the small boy, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. The storm outside was quieter now, but Danny could still hear his parents calling his name from somewhere in the distance. The creature took another step forward, its huge claws scraping against the concrete floor. Danny could feel the warmth coming from its body and smell the strange metallic scent of its breath. Any normal person would have run away screaming, but Danny did not move. The animals in the barn were pressed against the far wall, too frightened to make a sound. But Danny noticed something interesting. They were scared, but they were not running away either. It was as if they sensed that something important was happening. The Warbeast lowered its enormous head until it was level with Danny's face. The boy could see his own reflection in the creature's glowing eyes. For several long seconds, they simply looked at each other. Then Danny did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He reached out his small hand and placed it gently on the creature's snout. The Warbeast froze completely. Its whole body went still, as if Danny's touch had turned it into a statue. The red glow in its eyes flickered, and for a moment, Danny thought he saw something different there. Not anger or hunger, but confusion and surprise. "You're not mean," Danny said softly. "You're just scared and lonely." The creature made a low rumbling sound deep in its throat. It was not a growl or a roar. It sounded almost like a whimper, like the sound a lost puppy might make. Danny had always been good with animals, but this was different. He could feel something coming from the creature, like invisible words flowing between them. The Warbeast was trying to tell him something important. "You don't belong here, do you?" Danny asked, still keeping his hand on the creature's snout. "This isn't your home." The Warbeast's eyes brightened, and it made a more complex sound. Danny could not understand the words, but he could feel the meaning. The creature was agreeing with him. Outside the barn, Danny could hear footsteps running through the mud. His parents and the soldiers were coming to find him. But he knew they would be afraid when they saw the Warbeast. They would try to hurt it, and that would make everything worse. "They don't understand you like I do," Danny said to the creature. "They think you're dangerous because you broke their things. But you didn't mean to hurt anyone, did you?" The Warbeast shook its massive head slowly, like a dog saying no. Danny smiled. The creature was learning to communicate with him. The barn door burst open and Steve Miller ran inside with a plasma rifle in his hands. Behind him came Claire, Amy Rodriguez, and several soldiers with their weapons ready. "Danny, get away from that thing," Steve shouted, raising his rifle. But Danny did not move. Instead, he spread his arms wide, standing between his father and the Warbeast. "Don't shoot. It's not going to hurt me." "Danny, you don't understand," Amy said, trying to keep her voice calm. "That creature is extremely dangerous. It has killed hundreds of people." "But it doesn't want to kill," Danny replied. "It's just lost and confused. Look at its eyes. Really look at them." Amy had been hunting the Warbeast for months, but she had never been this close to it before. Against her better judgment, she looked into the creature's glowing eyes. What she saw there made her lower her weapon slightly. The eyes were not filled with hatred or bloodlust. They were filled with intelligence, and something that looked almost like sadness. Dr. Lisa Morgan pushed past the soldiers to get a better look. As a scientist, she was fascinated by what she was seeing. The creature was calm and peaceful, nothing like the raging monster from the attack reports. "This is incredible," Lisa whispered. "It's completely docile. How is that possible?" Danny turned to look at the adults. "It's not docile, it's just tired of being afraid. It's been trying to tell people something, but nobody would listen." The Warbeast made another sound, longer and more musical this time. It sounded almost like singing. Danny nodded as if he understood every note. "What is it trying to say?" Lisa asked, moving closer with her recording equipment. Danny listened carefully to the creature's sounds. "It's telling me about its home, a place far away where everything is different. It was sent here by accident, and it doesn't know how to get back." "Sent here by who?" Amy asked, still keeping her weapon ready. The Warbeast looked at Amy and made a series of complex sounds. Danny frowned, trying to understand. "It's hard to explain," Danny said finally. "There were others like it, but they're all gone now. It's the last one of its kind, and it's been alone for a very long time." Claire Miller had tears in her eyes. Despite her fear, she could hear the sadness in the creature's voice. "The poor thing. It must be so lonely." The Warbeast heard Claire's words and turned to look at her. For the first time since entering the barn, it moved away from Danny. Slowly and carefully, it approached Claire. Steve raised his rifle again, but Claire held up her hand to stop him. The massive creature lowered its head and gently touched Claire's shoulder with its snout. She could feel its warm breath on her face, but she was not afraid anymore. "It's saying thank you," Danny explained. "Thank you for understanding." Dr. Lisa Morgan was recording everything on her computer. "This changes everything we thought we knew about this creature. It's not a mindless killer. It's an intelligent being that has been trying to communicate." "But why did it attack those settlements?" Amy asked. "Why did it destroy so many buildings?" Danny asked the Warbeast this question in his own way, using gentle touches and soft sounds. The creature responded with a long, sad song. "It was trying to build something," Danny translated. "It was trying to make the buildings look like its home, but it doesn't know how to work with our materials. Every time it tried to fix something, it broke instead." The truth hit everyone at once. The Warbeast had not been attacking the settlements. It had been trying to help, trying to make them into something familiar. But its enormous size and strength had turned every attempt at construction into destruction. "It thought it was helping," Lisa said with amazement. "All this time it was trying to be useful." Amy lowered her weapon completely. "So what do we do now? How do we help it?" Danny looked up at the Warbeast and then back at the adults. "It needs to learn how to live with people without breaking things. It needs to understand that we're smaller and more fragile than it is." "Can you teach it?" Amy asked. Danny nodded confidently. "Animals learn fast when you're patient with them, but first it needs to learn some basic commands." He turned to face the Warbeast, looking up at its massive form. The creature looked down at him with its glowing red eyes, waiting to see what the boy would do next. Danny pointed to the ground and spoke in a clear, firm voice. "Sit." The Warbeast tilted its head, considering the command. Then slowly and carefully it lowered its massive body until it was sitting on the barn floor, like an enormous dog. Everyone in the barn stared in amazement. The creature that had terrorized 17 worlds, the monster that the entire Galactic Defense Force could not stop, had just followed a simple command from an 8-year-old boy. Danny walked over and patted the creature's leg. "Good boy," he said with a smile. From that day forward, everything changed. Danny spent his days teaching the Warbeast how to interact with humans safely. He showed it how to move carefully around buildings and people. He taught it games that used its strength without causing damage. The creature, which Danny decided to call Rex, learned quickly. It was eager to please and desperate for companionship after being alone for so long. Within weeks, it was helping the farmers with their work, moving heavy equipment and protecting the livestock from wild predators. The settlements that Rex had accidentally destroyed were rebuilt, this time with the creature's help. Rex proved to be an excellent construction worker once it learned to control its strength. The colonies that had once feared the Warbeast now welcomed Rex as a protector and friend. Dr. Lisa Morgan continued to study Rex, learning about its incredible intelligence and the advanced civilization that had created it. Amy Rodriguez recommended that Rex be given official status as a guardian of the outer colonies, and Danny Miller became famous throughout the galaxy as the boy who tamed the Warbeast with a single word. But Danny did not care about fame. He was just happy to have made a new friend. Every evening, as the sun set over Haven's Rest, Danny and Rex would sit together on the hill behind the Miller farm. The boy would tell stories about his day, and Rex would sing the strange, beautiful songs of its lost home. They were both different from everyone else around them, but together they had found exactly where they belonged.